Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Matt Taglia, Senior Director of Emerson College Polling. Matt, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Brittany.
Emerson College Polling, Pix 11, and The Hill have a recent poll out that has made quite a splash in the Garden State. It is all about New Jersey's gubernatorial race, and it is showing the race is in a dead heat between Democrat Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill and Republican Jack Ciattarelli. So, start off the conversation. Tell us what you found.
Yeah, Brittany, as you said, this is a dead heat. The race is tied currently. Sherrill, 43%, Ciattarelli, 43%, and 11% undecided. So there is still that undecided number there. It's relatively high for where we are at this point in the election. So I don't think this is obviously not over. There's a long way to go for these candidates, but I don't think that everyone has chosen a camp yet. And this race is very much in play. It is a jump ball right now.
And I want to talk about those undecideds in a bit, but I want to talk about who exactly chose their candidate and chose what camp they're in. When you look at the candidates and when you look at their support and it boils down to the demographics, who's going where?
Yeah, Brittany, and I think the most striking demographics, the most striking split in this poll is with age. So when we look at folks who are under the age of 40, we see Sherrill has a commanding lead, 58% to 24% for Ciattarelli. That tightens when we look at folks in their 40s, and it's 40% for Sherrill, or 47% for Sherrill rather, and 40% for Ciattarelli. And then Ciattarelli wins pretty handily among folks who are over the age of 50, about 52% in all of those age categories versus 36% for Sherrill. We also see that there's a gender divide. So women break for Sherrill by a pretty significant margin, 10 points there. Men, however, break for Ciattarelli by about 12 points. Women are also far more undecided, 15% versus 6% for men. And then we see that Ciattarelli is winning independents outright here by 25 points. I think that that is very interesting. It's very important to when we're looking at election day and how these undecided voters might break. But I think that alone, that's what's really keeping Ciattarelli in this race in a state that is otherwise usually good for Democrats.
And this is an 11% undecided. Who exactly is that going to help? Because right now, I mean, every vote really counts.
Absolutely. Every vote counts. Undecided voters here are mainly comprised of folks who are less educated. Women are more likely to be undecided than men. And then we also see that there's a higher number of independents who are undecided. So going back to that number, where Ciattarelli is winning independents by about 25%, I think that that undecided number could very well be in Ciattarelli's favor if these independents break as they are now. Now, on the other hand, folks who are under the age of 40 are also far more undecided than folks who are over the age of 40. So again, that is a camp that Sherrill does well with, that we typically expect to see Democrats do well with. So she could end up winning a sizable chunk of those undecided voters. So, we're seeing sort of mixed messages here. This could really go either way. You've got folks on sort of both sides of the political spectrum here who are undecided. This is really anyone's race still.
With numbers these tight, and like you said, it's really anyone's race, it would really come down to turnout as well. I'm sure that that is a huge factor here. And it is an off-year election. Does that help any candidate? Does that hurt any candidate? What does that really look like?
So in the past, we would have said that Republicans are helped by elections that have lower turnout, that are in off years, or elections that are smaller in scope and receive a little bit less press. And that's mainly because of the older, most diehard voters leaning Republican. We've seen that trend reverse over the past 6 to 8 years, and we see more Democrats now winning in some of these off-year elections, in elections that have lower turnout. So, it's hard to sort of handicap this. I think it's going to be really shaped by the state of play in New Jersey itself, by state politics, less so than national politics. New Jersey is just a very unique state. So I don't think that that one party or the other necessarily has an edge in turnout here. So again, really anyone's race in New Jersey is a very unique case here. I don't think the same can be said for Virginia and other states that have off-year elections.
In recent years, New Jersey has had Republican and Democrat governors. There's currently a Democrat governor with Phil Murphy. Before that, Governor Chris Christie was a Republican. But New Jersey has voted for the Democrat candidate for president since the 90s. Does this poll indicate to you that perhaps New Jersey is trending more red now?
And I don't know that I would say that New Jersey is trending red. I do think that it's a competitive state for sure. We did see that the margins narrowed in the 2024 election, about 5 or 6 points for Harris there versus higher numbers for Democrats, frankly, in past elections. So we definitely see that it is trending a little bit to the right. But I do think in these off-year elections, we have a lot of unknown variables. When we look at the approval ratings for Governor Murphy in particular, it's 41% approve versus 51% disapprove. So that's a 10-point margin towards disapprove. That's not a good place to be if you're the Democratic candidate on the ballot. And so, again, I think that this is really shaped by the state's politics, less so than national politics, because we also see that Trump is underwater by about 10 points in the state. And that clearly is not having an effect on Ciattarelli's support.
Talk to us about that a little bit. When you're looking at the approval rating of Governor Phil Murphy, the job approval rating slid 5 points since May. Trump's job approval rating in the state isn't great either, but it's a little better than Governor Murphy's. As we know, obviously, President Trump's a Republican, Governor Phil Murphy's a Democrat. If I'm Sherrill, does that make me nervous?
That would make me very nervous if I'm Sherrill. And I think it helps explain a lot of the results in this poll. You know, seeing that Governor Murphy is underwater by as much as he is, you know, she is inevitably going to be on his coattails, whether she likes it or not. She will be attached to this outgoing Democratic administration. And then when you look at some of the numbers in the demographics, you see that independents are split over Trump approval, but they overwhelmingly disapprove of Governor Murphy's job performance by about 33 points. That is an astounding number to see among these unaffiliated voters in the state. I think that also helps explain why Ciattarelli is able to pick up that support. And so Sherrill is going to have quite the task ahead of her to try and win back some of these independent voters who otherwise might not be willing to give her a chance purely because she's a Democrat.
When you and I talk about gubernatorial races, we often bring up that Governor Gavin Newsom has been really effective in standing up to the Trump administration, and voters in California seem to like that. But as we know, California is a deep blue state, much more blue than New Jersey. Do voters in the Garden State want their governor to stand up to President Trump and the Trump administration or work with them?
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, I think New Jersey is a little bit more of a purple state than California, and so the results here are different than what we would expect there. And what we see is that voters are split. So 49% hope that the next governor of New Jersey works with the Trump administration versus 51% who say they hope the governor stands up to the Trump administration. This is an increase, though, in folks who say they want the governor to stand up to the Trump administration by about 4 points since May. But again, looking at those independent voters who I think are going to be really crucial here, they want the next governor to work with the Trump administration by a margin of 57 to 43%. So I don't think that either candidate is necessarily going to win off critiquing or placating the Trump administration in either way. I think that it is a needle to thread here, but I don't think that their position on the Trump administration is necessarily going to be a decisive factor.
New Jersey is a really interesting state. I grew up about 30 minutes outside of New Jersey on more of the southern side. And when you get to South Jersey, you get to the city of Philadelphia. You're right outside of Philly. Then when you go all the way up to the north part of New Jersey, you're right outside of New York. Also a completely different city. So the state really sees a lot. What are the issues, the top issues facing Garden State voters, and do they change compared to the top issues we've talked about time and time again when it comes to the economy, immigration, issues like that?
And as you might expect, Brittany, it doesn't change too much, at least for that top number, which of course is the economy. 51% say that this is their top issue. Moving down the line, though, we see that threats to democracy is in second with 13%, and then housing affordability at 11%. So I do want to note here that housing and the economy combined equals 62% of voters' top issues. That's almost 2/3 of the electorate who say that that is their top issue. I think that that would, likely include energy, property taxes, other home expenses. There's clearly a strain here. Folks in New Jersey see rising costs, or they don't see their costs coming down, and this is their top issue. And I think this number is higher than we see in most states. We tend to see this number, this economy and housing number combined, in places like California. New Jersey is not necessarily the natural fit for this, but we are seeing it here. So I think that these will be major issues. Both candidates are going to have to speak to that. I think they need to speak to this, again, more so than talking about the Trump administration, really bringing it home to state politics and how they're going to affect folks' payments, their pocketbooks, their bank accounts.
And after this poll was taken, there was almost, it seemed like, an October surprise at the end of September. It was reported there was a cheating scandal at the Naval Academy in 1994. That was the year Sherrill graduated, and she didn't walk at graduation in connection to the scandal. She said she was not punished for cheating, but instead punished because she didn't snitch on the classmates who did. Does this have a possibility, in your opinion, to really rattle this race, especially with numbers so close?
Absolutely. I think it has the potential to impact this race. Now, we did not test this with the electorate. We fielded this poll before the news broke. So, we don't have concrete numbers here to go by, but I think both sides of the aisle, both campaigns, are looking at this. Sherrill is trying to capitalize on this and say, hey, this is how Ciattarelli is going to treat your personal records. But I think that this could impact the race either way. It's going to be up to voters to determine, whether this really is a major scandal, whether it affects Sherrill's ability to lead, and likewise, whether they blame Ciattarelli for the release and how they feel about that.
Well, there is certainly a lot to look out for in this race because, as you said, it really is anyone's race as we head closer to Election Day. And I hope you have more numbers on it as we inch closer, and I hope we can talk about them then. Matt Taglia, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you, Brittany.